So last time we chatted, Francoise, we talked about a bit about the works, the theme, and some of the stories involved in not only the creation of the works from the artists in Where's Your Permit, but also some of the stories in how the show got on the wall and was installed. It was really informative, and thank you so much for that insight. And you've been doing something else at the Tanks Art Centre, not just installing the Where's Your Permit exhibition. Tell us about that.
Yes. So the, I mean, when I took on the curatorial role with Janina, one of the things that was in the back of my mind was that when it came to installation, how we thought about the layout of the exhibition wall. So the tanks is, they're circular, they are old oil tanks from the Second World War that were used by the Australian Air Force. And they have been repurposed into cultural spaces. So Tank 4 is one of those tanks, and the interior exhibition space has a grid layout. So in terms of their lighting layout, it's based on a grid system. And they have exhibition walls of various lengths, the longest being 4.2 metres, the shortest being 2.4, and they're all on casters. So they're quite heavy, but movable walls with Where's Your Permit, and in early discussions with the Tanks curator, Chris Stannard, we proposed changing the layout. This was something that is quite new to Tanks. They've never had a exhibition wall plan that varied, that went off course from the grid. So we were stepping outside of the comfort zones for the curator of the tanks, and we really had to think about the justification or the argument for that change. So being a designer, I think in that space of justifying why, whereas as an artist, you just do. So
that's right.
Create. So I thought, hey, these design skills are fantastic, you know.
and you're both, of course, and in this exhibition as well. You're a co-curator, and you have a wall of your own of these beautiful prints. And of course, we met many years ago in the arts, but we interviewed last year for CIAF, A Cultural Evolution, the digital art fair, about your prints. And even last year, I was so impressed with the works that you had done. You know, it's always so different. And then these ones as well, completely different to what you showed me last year. So how was it to get to be both artist and curator when it came to this design, which I found quite interesting? Because you're right, the tanks, and it had always been serviceable for the exhibitions they've had, but had always been sort of a grid. And if you're familiar with the Tanks Art Centre, the layout, I feel, opens it up a bit more, even though there's seemingly more walls.
Yes. It's really interesting how you can change the experience of someone entering the exhibition space with the layout of the walls. In the past, there are basically two entry points into Tank 4, the gallery, and with the COVID plan that they have in place, the main entry is from the east side of the tank. And in the past, in past exhibitions, you've been confronted with a wall that blocks off the view beyond. And so you cannot see 2/3 of the space from the entry. You're really blocked off to only being able to see about 6 meters in by 3 meters. So it's quite containing, which would never do for Where's Your Permit. the wonderful thing was Chris was really supportive when I explained to him that the premise of the exhibition, Where's Your Permit, is about truth-telling of times of, I guess, living with permits, but now we're not under those same permits anymore.
No.
So we have to think differently in terms of designing the space, and we had to think about how we make the space responsive to our cultural values, that we're not designing to fit a grid, to fit what's been done in the past. This is the perfect time to design for our cultural values. And my experience with my business, Indij Design, which is an architecture and design practice, we have worked in the space of Indigenous design for over 20 years. And for the last 10 years been really involved in the cultural values and nuances of our culture in this region and up in the Cape. And we're still learning, like there's so much we don't know. But I was able to bring some of those experiences and those common values into the consideration of the wall layout for the space. So my aim was to indigenize Tank 4. And we had the support of Tanks, of Chris Stannard to do that. And we went for it. So the layout of the space has a spine wall as like the base in plan when you look at the plan view. And then off that spine wall, which continues from the entry right through to what I've shortened to the men's business area, where Garth Merger's artefacts are, there are ribs coming off that main spine wall. It sort of reminds me of a dugong skeleton in elevation, but that's not what it is. So you've got the spine wall and ribs coming off it, and what it allows for is the cultural value of being able to have sight lines through the space, being able to choose whether you walk around those ribs or whether you feel safer walking along that spine wall and then navigating your way through the ribs from off that spine wall.
And weaving in.
Yeah, weaving in. And that spine wall references, I guess, those same psychological feelings that you might have when you walk into a cave and you have this cocoon. One of the things that Garth Merger said about a coolamon that he'd crafted for the exhibition was that they were used to hold food, so sustenance, and also women used coolamons to place their babies in. And, that curved reference is something that is very comforting for our people. And
it's an interesting word you use, the curve, the reference of the shape of a curve, because the exhibition is simultaneously a historical perspective on that protectionist era, also something that reflects, of course, 2020 and 2021 with the restrictions of movements and, in our way, the new permit system about how you can enter a place, where you can travel to, what requirements you have to meet in order to do that. So it's the curve of time as well. And you said that you can see through the exhibition, and I feel that that is symbolic of the story and the message of the exhibition and of the individual works you're trying to tell is that that sideline that encapsulates where we are and bookends it as we move forward.
Yeah, that's a beautiful analogy, Jack. Yeah. So the visibility lines through the exhibition space is really important. I think it goes beyond just our cultural values, but up in the Cape, there are communities, and some of those communities have works in this exhibition where they practice avoidance behaviours. So this is where you have a wife who would avoid interactions with her brother-in-law, or so there are certain practices within families that are still practiced today, and I wanted to allow the space to accommodate those practices so that when those artists entered the space, they felt safe and they felt welcome. So when you enter the space, you have all these sight lines kind of where you can glimpse where people are moving in the space. You can glimpse where your exit is and how you can avoid interactions that may not be customary to have. So on the last day of installation, I was just standing and looking at the layout and you know, critically thinking through it as the curator, and I thought, we're missing something. And then it occurred to me, I was looking at the layout of the seating, which I thought that's not going to do. And I went, that's it. We needed the yarning circle, and it wasn't a throwaway. You don't indigenize a space just through the inclusion of a yarning circle. That would be really superficial. But I knew that people would, viewing the space, would want to sit down and take stock of just some of the things they'd seen. And it allows the conversation to happen. So a yarning circle is a perfect place for that.
And it's such a, from an Indigenous perspective, that, like you say, that, you know, not to be superficial, to include a yarning circle, but even from a gallery perspective, more broadly, the way that a lot of the galleries, especially the major institutions, are created, and then somehow the smaller showroom type galleries are, is they're not communal spaces. There's not a lot of seating opportunities. You're encouraged to stand, you're encouraged to walk through and then leave. It's such an interesting way to bring people into staying with the artworks and thinking about them. But there's an element to the exhibition as well. I believe that visitors to the exhibition, and of course we'll let everybody know any changes around that due to the COVID concerns of the lockdown. But of course, you know, as far as we're aware now, it'll be back open to the public, of course, and you'll have to QR code and whatnot to come inside. But it's for those who do get down, and I implore you to do it and have a look at the exhibition, there's also a QR code linking to a special video for those who can come down on the didactics, isn't it, or on the labels?
That's right. So the CIAF team have a treat for those who come in to view the artworks. We've got a special interview with the Hopevale artists, who are respected elders and traditional owners from Hopevale. So they talk about their art, and so that's a special treat for those that come into the exhibition.
That's good. And I think it's such a brilliant way to encourage people to tell stories that respond to a theme, that respond to our history, that responds to our contemporary circumstances. And you're the right woman for the job because of your outlook and your experience in the other lines of work that you do, which are also creative, focus on space and the person's feeling in a space. It's more than an exhibition. I think that what you've done and what work that the Tanks have, the room that they've given you, I think it's commendable. I think it's really it's laid the foundation for such a great opportunity to talk and to learn. And I think that's what's so important about this show to me.
Yeah. And I think the relevance of the content and the theme goes beyond our region. There are many stories out there that haven't been told. And I think there's real opportunity for this exhibition to go beyond the region, especially given the impact of restrictions on it. I really love to see it go further and to allow other.
I would too, yeah. So it's such a great exhibition. I think you're right. The stories can can go around the country, it's just a great way to encourage other regions and other places and other people to have these thoughts. And their exhibitions won't be so lucky because they won't have you involved, unfortunately for them, but we're really glad and proud to have had you part of that team and to be part of the CIAF family, as you have been for years and hopefully many years to come.
Thank you, Jack.
Oh, you're welcome, and thanks for joining us again, and for sharing your perspectives and your outlooks on such a great show. And I just can't wait for people to be able to go and see the works.
Thank you.